There is a truth few women are ever told. A man does not desire the body first. He desires what reflects back his forgotten soul. Not every man, but the kind you're drawn to without knowing why. The one whose gaze lingers a second too long, not out of hunger, but recognition. The kind of man who doesn't chase to conquer, but slows down to feel. And maybe, just maybe, he pulled away, without warning. He retreated not because you lacked something, but because your presence touched a part of him he hadn't yet made peace with. He couldn't explain why. You might have blamed yourself. But listen carefully. What if it wasn't rejection? What if it was revelation? See, most men are not afraid of women. They're afraid of mirrors, especially the ones that don't distort, the ones that reflect their own depth, the dreams they've buried, the tenderness they forgot how to hold. Because desire, real desire, doesn't erupt from skin or smiles. It rises from resonance, from the silent collision between his unconscious longing and your unspoken truth. This isn't about seduction. This isn't about charm, strategy, or saying the right thing. It's about being the thing. The unshaken presence that doesn't chase but reveals. The voice that doesn't try to convince but awakens. You felt it before, when he looked at you like he was trying to remember something sacred. And maybe he couldn't name it. But his body knew. His breath slowed, his energy shifted. Because somewhere beneath the armor and noise, you didn't just attract him. You called him. And that is where this begins. A man does not fall in love with what he sees. He falls in love with what awakens in him when he sees you. And that awakening, it's not logical. It doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the symbolic spaces of the psyche, where emotion is the first language, and truth doesn't come in sentences, but in sensations. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what he didn't say, what only life teaches, is that sometimes the transformation begins too soon, too fast, too deep. And when a man meets a woman who carries more than her surface, when her presence reflects more than her smile, he doesn't always stay. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. In Jungian psychology, there's a name for this: anima projection. Every man carries within him an unconscious image of the feminine, not of a woman, but of his own soul in symbolic feminine form. And when he meets a woman who mirrors that image, not through performance but through presence, something ancient stirs. He begins to project that inner feminine outward, seeing not just you, but the parts of himself he's longed to reclaim, his vulnerability, his creativity, his tenderness, his forgotten instinct for beauty. But here's the paradox. The anima awakens not just love, but fear, because she is not soft comfort, she is transformation. And transformation demands surrender. And not every man is ready to give up the version of himself that keeps him safe. So what does he do? He retreats, he disappears. Not always because he doesn't want you, but because some part of him realizes you see too much. And when a man feels seen before he is ready, he may call it too much, when in truth it was the exact amount he needed. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile, deny, or fear. A woman who knows how to sit in her own depths can often see a man's shadow before he does. She may not name it, she may not even understand it fully, but she feels it. And in her silence, in her gaze, in her presence, she offers him a mirror, not of perfection, but of possibility. He may mistake that mirror for danger. He may project his unworthiness onto it. He may try to control it, dismiss it, even break it. But the truth remains, he saw something in her that called him home. And that is where desire truly begins. Not in performance, not in perfection, but in the unconscious recognition of self in the other. This is the sacred function of intimacy, not to complete, but to reveal. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psychic process by which opposites unite, by which a man begins to integrate the parts of himself he once believed belonged to someone else. So when he says, "I don't know what it is about you," when he lingers longer than he should, when he keeps returning without understanding why, that's not confusion. That's invocation. He is not falling in love with your body. He is falling in love with the symbol you've become, the living reflection of the inner woman within him who wants to be known. And here's what no one tells you. You don't have to do anything to be that mirror. You don't have to become more magnetic, more seductive, more pleasing. You only have to become more yourself. Because when a woman is rooted in her own depths, when she no longer flinches at her own emotions, when she no longer performs, she begins to carry an energetic weight that speaks directly to a man's unconscious. And he hears it, even when he doesn't know he does. Especially then. He notices how your gaze doesn't grasp, how your voice doesn't rise to be heard, how your silence isn't anxious but aware. He notices how you don't try to fix his pain, you witness it, and something inside him softens. Not from weakness, but from recognition. Because in a world that demands he prove himself, you are the space where he doesn't have to. Desire then becomes something sacred. Not a chase, but a call. He doesn't want you because you impressed him. He wants you because, in your presence, he remembers a part of himself he forgot was real. And that is the beginning of everything. The moment desire is no longer impulse but invitation. So if you've ever wondered why he vanished, why the connection was intense but didn't last, why your softness seemed to scare him, it's not because you were too much, it's because you were a mirror. And sometimes that reflection comes before a man is ready to see it. But you were never meant to dim. You were meant to reveal. Because when a man is ready to evolve, he won't run from the mirror. He'll walk toward it, toward you. Not to consume you, but to remember himself through you. And that is the psychology of desire. Desire, real desire, is not a hunger for touch. It is a yearning to be seen by something ancient. Every emotionally available man carries within him a series of sleeping archetypes. You do not awaken them with seduction. You awaken them by presence. These are not roles you play, but frequencies you hold. Each one responds not to words alone, but to the way you say nothing and are still understood. Let me show you how it happens. The natural protector. He is not awakened by need. He is not drawn to dependency. He rises naturally in the presence of trust. This part of him, it's ancient. Older than culture, older than language. It is the firekeeper within him, the one who straightens his posture when the woman beside him exudes calm. He does not want to save her. He wants to stand beside her because she believes in the goodness of his presence without asking for proof. Picture this. You're walking beside him. The night air hums low, the street unfamiliar. A sudden noise, unimportant to you. You don't startle. You just move half an inch closer and say gently, "I feel like nothing can happen to me when I'm with you." You didn't plead. You didn't dramatize. You named what you saw in him and let it breathe. In that moment, his chest rises, not with ego, but with presence. Because you did not demand strength. You recognized it. The protector is not awakened by crisis. He is awakened by trust embodied. And when this part of him stirs, you will notice. He watches you differently. His hand becomes more certain when he touches your back. He places himself between you and chaos without saying a word. He brings structure to your softness, not to limit you, but to surround you. But here's what you must remember. This archetype fades when a woman reaches for it from lack. If you say, "I need you to protect me," he might comply. But if you say, "I feel safe when you're around," he becomes the man you saw before he remembered he was. That is the difference. The untamable man. He has been admired, he has been feared, he has been misunderstood so often that when he is finally seen without the desire to tame him, he does not know what to do with it. He is fire, not anger, but raw, wild intensity, purpose that burns in silence. And the truth is, he does not want to be fixed, he wants to be met. Picture this. He's talking about something bold, a vision, a project, an idea that sounds unhinged to everyone else. You don't interrupt. You don't be careful him. You wait, you feel the heat in his voice. And when he's done, you smile. Not with politeness, but from your belly. And say softly, "There's something in you that doesn't know how to give up, and I wouldn't want it any other way." That sentence, it doesn't flatter, it frees. He looks at you differently now. Not as someone who wants to capture him, but as someone who could run beside him. You see, the untamable man does not fall in love with someone who softens his fire. He falls for the one who doesn't flinch when it burns, who doesn't fear his intensity because she's met her own. You'll know you've touched this part of him when he begins to share not just his triumphs, but his failures. When he stops performing and starts revealing. When the rhythm of his energy slows, not from exhaustion, but from trust. He's not asking you to understand his chaos, only to stop trying to cage it. So when you say, "I don't want to change you, I want to see you in your fullest expression," he doesn't run, he returns, because finally, someone isn't trying to win him, they're witnessing him. If these words are already awakening something in you, take a breath and give something back. Like this video. Let it ripple. And if something specific stirred you, leave it in the comments. This is not just content. It's a conversation of souls. And if you want more of this kind of emotional truth, subscribe. You'll feel it when it's time for the next one. The man of steel and calm. He's not loud. He doesn't always reach first. But when he shows up, the whole room changes. His desire is not explosive. It is rooted. He holds the kind of energy that steadies you when your own waters churn. He doesn't dominate. He contains. You may miss him at first, because the world teaches women to look for loud reassurance, constant affirmation, answers on demand. But the man of steel and calm speaks in silences that hold. He speaks with his body, his stillness, his breath. Picture this. You're overwhelmed. The day has scattered you in pieces. You're sitting beside him, not asking for anything, just breathing near him. He doesn't try to fix it. He doesn't offer advice. He just places his hand over yours and says quietly, "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just rest. I'm here." And just like that, the noise fades. Not because he solved it, but because he didn't leave. He desires a woman who can feel before she speaks, who isn't afraid of silence because she trusts her own rhythm, who says things like, "I don't need answers from you right now. Your presence is enough." When he hears that, he breathes deeper. Because finally someone understands that his calm is not absence, it's mastery. You'll know this part of him is stirring when he begins to linger. He'll place his jacket over your shoulders before you ask. He'll slow his touch, make it intentional, as if he's offering you a part of his center. He will not be stirred by drama, but he will open to the one who knows how to rest in herself and invite him there with her. Some women shine brightly, but some glow. Mystery isn't about hiding, it's about depth. Not everything shown, not everything explained. Not because you're playing a game, but because your soul unfolds like a story, one chapter at a time. A man drawn to mystery doesn't want all of you at once. He wants to discover you again and again, like the ocean that never reveals all its secrets in one tide. Imagine this, you're both sitting across from each other. The world outside is moving, but inside this moment, stillness. You don't fill the space, you let it breathe. And just when he thinks the silence might end, you say in a low voice, you ask good questions, but you listen even better. Then you smile, gently, and say nothing else. That moment doesn't need decoration, because it lives in the space between. The mysterious woman doesn't withhold out of fear. She reveals from discernment. She doesn't try to be liked. She waits to be understood. This man doesn't just want answers. He wants to feel your questions linger. He desires a woman who knows who she is without needing to prove it. A woman who leaves room for him to wonder, to reach, to remember. You'll know this archetype is awake in him when he begins to ask deeper questions. Not about your job or your weekend, but about your essence. He'll want to know what you dream about when no one's looking, what songs you play when you're falling apart, what it feels like when you're fully alive. Because something in you reminds him of something in himself he hasn't named yet. And mystery, real mystery, is the invitation he didn't know he was waiting for. These 4 archetypes, protector, untamable, still and calm, mystery, they are not personas to chase, they are truths to embody. You don't awaken them by doing, you awaken them by being. By knowing that the deepest part of a man responds not to your effort, but to your energy. When you speak from presence, he listens. When you move from depth, he follows. When you trust your own silence, he enters it with reverence. Because in the end, he's not looking for the loudest light. He's looking for the fire that doesn't flicker when he finally lets himself be seen. There comes a moment in a woman's life when she's no longer willing to chase what cannot meet her. When her ache to be chosen dissolves into a quiet knowing that she was never meant to be the performer. She was always meant to be the presence. If you've made it this far, you already know. This is not about men. It never was. It's about you remembering the sound of your own breath when you're not asking for permission to be desired. The truth is, you cannot awaken desire in a man until you stop performing for it. Not because you're wrong, but because the feminine doesn't attract from effort. It attracts from essence. You may have been taught to earn love by being pleasing, by staying quiet, by molding your softness into something palatable, measured, easy to digest. But Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. And maybe what's ready to transform now is the idea that you have to do something to be worthy of deep masculine presence. You don't. The men who vanished, the ones who pulled away when it got real, they weren't always rejecting you. Sometimes they were just retreating from the version of themselves they saw in your eyes, the version they hadn't grown into yet. You didn't lose them, you mirrored them, and they weren't ready to stand still in that reflection. But you don't need to become less radiant just because someone blinked in your light. You don't need to explain your depth to those who only speak in surfaces. You don't need to keep trying to earn what already sees you if you just stop reaching. Let this land. He remembers not your perfection, but your presence. Not your logic, but your rhythm. Not what you gave him, but how he felt around you when you weren't trying to be anything other than whole. And that wholeness, that's your power. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't perform. She discerns. She doesn't ask, am I enough? She asks, is this space safe enough for me to remain true to myself? She doesn't run after a man who leaves. She stays rooted and trusts that what is hers does not need to be convinced. The emotionally mature man doesn't fall for the woman who tries to win him. He rises for the woman who reminds him who he is, not by flattering his ego, but by speaking to his identity. And you can only speak to his identity when you've made peace with your own. So no, you don't need to soften your truth to keep his attention. You don't need to ignore your intuition to keep the connection. You don't need to apologize for how deeply you feel, or how slowly you open, or how clearly you see. In fact, it's those very qualities that awaken the right man's desire. You want to know the difference between performing and magnetism? Performance is exhausting. Magnetism is effortless. Performance is reaching. Magnetism is resting. Performance tries to anticipate what he needs. Magnetism trusts that if he is ready, he will come closer to feel what she already is. And if he doesn't, she doesn't collapse, because she was never leaning on him for her identity in the first place. You don't need a strategy. You need sovereignty. You don't need to control his attention. You need to contain your own. Because the moment you stop reaching, you start receiving. When your gaze no longer asks, do you see me? But says, I see you, without grasp, without need, that is when he feels it. That subtle, sacred shift where your presence becomes the invitation he didn't know he was waiting for. The moment you breathe instead of react. The moment you speak truth without decorating it. The moment you choose to remain in your center, even as his shadow stirs. That is when he knows. You are not the storm. You are the eye within it. And a man who's ready for depth doesn't run from that. He returns to it, again and again. Because in a world of noise and need, you became the one who didn't beg to be heard. And yet, everything in you was felt. He won't remember everything you said. But he will remember the moment your energy touched something in him he thought no one could reach. He may forget the dress you wore, the place you met, the timeline of your conversations. But he will not forget how his nervous system softened when you looked at him without needing him to fix you. He remembers not your details, but your depth. Because presence is more unforgettable than beauty, and reflection is more intimate than touch. And when you held your gaze, when you didn't flinch at his intensity, when you breathed instead of reacted, you weren't just a woman. You were a mirror, a memory, a message. He may have left, but something in him stayed. Because desire is not about ownership, it's about recognition. Of soul and soul, of fire and fire, of stillness meeting stillness. So if you're wondering what he's thinking now, what he remembers when he lies in silence, ask yourself, what part of him woke up because of you? That answer never fades. Even if he does, you were not too much. You were just the first truth reflection he couldn't explain. And your value was never in his response. It was in your resonance. So keep being that. Not for him, but because it's who you are when you stop trying to earn your place in rooms you were always meant to own. The woman who no longer fears being alone becomes the one he never forgets, because she's not waiting to be chosen. She already chose herself. If this felt like something you didn't know you needed until now, don't let it disappear. Like it, save it, share it with someone who sees the world like you do. Leave a comment, not for me, but for the version of you that needed to hear this. And if you felt seen here, subscribe, because this space was made for you.